doing lesson number 12, order of operations. We've done the order of operations already this year. But if you remember doing the order of operations, we skipped a part. And so let me zoom in a little bit. And let's look at what we've got here. When we talked about the order of operations, we talked about something called PEMDAS. This is the order in which we simplify an algebraic expression. And if you remember, we skipped over, we didn't talk about, we didn't apply, we didn't worry about the exponents. Well, now we are. But we're not going to jump into it whole hog at the beginning. We're just going to do some small baby steps and then let it build from lesson to lesson. When we talk about exponents, there's there's about three small little problems that we have to be able to know how to do, and they deal with negatives. So let me throw them out at you. So let's go. I'll write them up here, and then we'll talk about them, and then we'll practice doing this a little bit. So let's go negative 3 squared. Let's do negative 3, and let's put the negative inside the parentheses. And then let's go negative and the negative on the outside, so it's negative 3 squared. All right, I guess if you look at these at the beginning, you're going to say, oh, well, those are all the same. It's got to all be the same answers, like negative 9 every time. Well, they're not all negative 9. And what we have to remember is this. We have to remember that when we have an exponent, the exponent acts on whatever it's directly above. And the key word there is directly. It has to act on whatever is directly above. And I think the hardest one to get in your head is the first one. It looks like this 2 acts on the 3 and the negative. But this 2 only acts on the 3. And so if it only acts on the 3, then this negative comes down unaffected. And so that would be negative 9. That's weird. And I can tell you right now, on the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lessons, I'm going to be giving this type of a question to you. And you're going to have to recognize that 2 does not act on that negative, and it needs to be brought down. Let's look at this next one. Look at this 2. Does that 2 act on that negative? Well, here's what you have to think about. What is the 2 above? Well, the 2 is above the parenthesis. So it acts on whatever's inside the parentheses. Since it's above the parenthesis, it acts on whatever's inside the parenthesis. So that 2 then acts on the 3 and the negative. Well, what's negative times negative? We've done that before. That's positive. And then that'll be 9. Another way you could think about this one is really negative 3 times negative 3. That's really what that means. So 2 negatives multiplied together is going to give you a positive 9. So you get positive 9 either way. Just think of it 2 different ways. Let's look at this one. Does the 2 act on the negative, and does the 2 act on the 3? Well, the 2 is above the parentheses, so it acts on anything inside the parenthesis. Well, the negative's not inside the parentheses, so the 2 does not act on the negative, it only acts on the 3. So that becomes 9, and the negative just comes down along for the ride. So notice, 3 problems that look really similar don't all have the same answer. Let's do another example. Let's do negative 5 squared. This pencil is about ready to throw it through the camera here. So negative 5 squared. Let's do negative 2. I'm screwing up. And then something like that. Let's go through them. See if you remember how to do these. It's just like the ones we just did. Does the 2 act on the negative? No, because the 2 is above the parenthesis and only acts on the stuff inside the parentheses. So that'll be 25. Bring down the minus. Does the 2 act on this negative? Yeah, because the 2 is above the parentheses, so it acts on anything inside the parenthesis. So it's negative times negative, which is positive. Does this 2 act on the negative? I think this is the hardest one, and the answer is no. It only acts on the 5, not the negative, so this becomes negative 25. Okay, with that said, let's run through a couple examples that we can kind of get used to. How about we do something like this? Let's do 5 squared minus 4. 5 squared minus 4. The 2 acts on the 5, so that's 25. Bring down the 4. Doesn't act on the negative 4, and then we subtract. That's 21. Let's do another one. Let's do like negative 6 squared plus 10. Does the 2 act on the negative? No. It doesn't act on the negative. That's the hardest one to keep straight. So the negative comes down. 6 squared is 36. Bring down the plus 10. The signs are different, so we subtract. So 36 minus 10 is 26. And we keep the sign of the larger numbers. So 36 is bigger than 10, so we keep that negative. And there it is. Another one. Let's go negative 15 minus, let's go 4 squared. And then I'll tell you what, I think what I'll do is I'll do 2 of them at the same time. So let's go negative 15 plus negative 4. Let's do that. That'll make it fun. Can I focus that in a little better? Okay, so let's do the first one. Does the 2 act on the negative? No, it doesn't act on the negative. So then, if it doesn't act on the negative, then it only acts on the 4, so that's 16. Bring down the negative 15. Let's look on this one. Does the 2 act on the negative? Yeah, it does. So this is negative 15 plus 2 negatives give you a positive. There's the 16. Over here, the signs are different. I'm sorry, the signs are the same. So 15 and 16 is 31. Bring down their sign. Ooh, that's a little better. Let's rewrite this one. This is really 15 plus 16. Signs are different. So then I keep the sign of the larger number, subtract, and keep the sign of the larger number. So subtract them as 1, and I keep the positive. Okay, so let's go back up to order of operations. Let's just look at this. So when we have exponents in a problem, we have to do the exponents before we do any multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So we still do everything inside the parentheses first. But once we're done with that, then we do the exponents. And that's kind of what we did down here, if you just look real quick. So we had subtraction here. So we could have done 5 minus 4, but that would have broken the rules. We have to do the exponents first before we subtract. Same thing here, exponents before we add and subtract. Exponents before we add and subtract. Let's do one more that's got a little more difficulty on it, and then we'll call it quits. So let's put parentheses in here. Let's go 5 minus 6, and then let's square it. Okay, so do we square it first? Do we square the 5 and the 6? Or do we do inside the parentheses first? Well, let's look at the order of operations. The order of operations says do parentheses first. So we're going to ignore the exponent and just subtract. So we got negative 5 minus 6. The signs are different, so I subtract. So that'll be a negative 1. I keep the sign of the larger number. Bring down the 2. Bring down the minus out in front. Okay, and then the next step. Do the exponents. The question is, does this exponent act on that negative? No. It only acts on whatever's inside the parenthesis. So that negative comes down. But this 2 does act on that negative, so it makes it positive. And then there's the 1, and that becomes negative 1. This is like a negative 1 right here. So negative times positive is negative, and 1 times 1 is 1. Oops, you need to be able to see that. All right, there is lesson number 12. Good luck.